At 6:31 a.m., I realized something was very wrong, because the lake was silent, but my pulse was screaming. I stepped onto the dock barefoot, still half asleep, expecting the usual calm. Water like glass. Mist hanging low. And then I saw it. Bright orange. Neon yellow. White rectangles layered like scales. Violation stickers. Dozens of them. Plastered across my boat like a public execution. This wasn't graffiti. This was targeted. 47 HOA violation notices slapped onto a Navy Shore Patrol vessel. Not a toy. Not a replica. Official government equipment. The adhesive was so aggressive it tore paint when I tried to peel the first one off. My fingers trembled, not from PTSD, not from fear, but from something hotter. More dangerous. Rage. Each sticker screamed the same accusation in bold black ink: unauthorized structure. Aesthetic noncompliance. Property value violation. Property values. I scraped one sticker off the hull and froze. Underneath it, the American flag decal was ripped clean through. Torn. Wrinkled. Defaced. Whoever did this didn't rush. They took their time. I could still smell her perfume, cheap, floral, lingering in the morning air like a calling card. Then I heard heels on wood. Click. 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 I turned slowly. There she stood at the edge of the dock like she owned the lake itself. Beatrice Ashworth Klein. 63 years old. Perfectly styled silver hair. Oversized sunglasses before sunrise. A pressed white blazer. And in her manicured hand? An industrial-grade sticker gun. She smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not even a smug one. A satisfied smile. "Your military toy," she said, dragging out the words, "is destroying our community's image." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I was counting. Breathing. Grounding myself the way the therapists taught me after Afghanistan. She stepped closer. "You people," she continued, voice sharp as broken glass, "need to understand this isn't some war zone. Military families bring chaos. Noise. Trauma." She gestured toward my house. "This neighborhood deserves peace. Peace. I'm Chief Petty Officer Danny Sullivan. 23 years Navy. EOD. Bomb disposal. I've defused IEDs with shaking hands and lived to tell about it. I've lost friends whose names still wake me up at night. My wife, Sarah, works ICU. She runs toward disaster while others run away. Our twin boys are 12, and this lake house? This was supposed to be where I healed. And this woman just declared war over an HOA rulebook. I looked back at my boat. Regulation navy gray. Shore Patrol SP 4429. Government-issued radar. Emergency lights. Every inch of it logged, registered, and authorized by the base commander. I use it on weekends for harbor security. It gives me purpose. Structure. Something solid when my mind won't slow down. Beatrice knew all of that. She'd been HOA compliance chair for 8 years. Inherited a $2.3 million lakefront estate. Drove an $85,000 Mercedes with vanity plates that literally read comply. And now she'd crossed a line she didn't even realize existed. Because what she saw as a property value issue, the Navy would see as interference with active military operations. She turned to leave, heels clicking again. "Oh," she added without looking back. "Daily fines start at $500. I suggest you remove the eyesore immediately." She walked away smiling. I stood there, surrounded by violation stickers, my flag torn, my hands clenched into fists. And in that moment, I made a single decision. I wasn't calling the HOA. I was calling the Shore Patrol. The phone rang twice before someone picked up, and with that click, everything shifted. "Shore Patrol Operations, this is Lieutenant Harris." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calm is something you learn when one wrong movement can end lives. "Sir," I said, "this is Chief Petty Officer Danny Sullivan, ED. My assigned Shore Patrol vessel has been vandalized. There was a pause. Not confusion. Recognition. Say again, Chief. 47 HOA violation stickers applied directly to government property. Hull damage. Flag defaced. Possible interference with active duty equipment. Silence stretched just long enough to feel heavy. Stand by, he finally said. I hung up and looked back at the dock. The sun was climbing now, light glinting off every ugly sticker like they were proud of themselves. A few neighbors had started peeking through their curtains. HOA people never confront you in private. They perform. They want witnesses. 10 minutes later, the lake wasn't silent anymore. Low engines. 2 unmarked Navy SUVs rolled in slow and deliberate, tires crunching gravel like a warning. Shore Patrol insignia flashed in the early light as doors opened in perfect unison. 4 officers stepped out. Crisp uniforms. Serious faces. Clipboards already in hand. That's when the neighbors really started watching. Lieutenant Harris walked straight to me, eyes scanning the boat. His jaw tightened. Who did this? I pointed. Beatrix dock was 2 houses down. Same place she'd been standing minutes earlier. Same smug posture, except now the smile was gone. She was frozen mid-sip of her morning espresso, eyes locked on the uniform she clearly hadn't planned for. Harris nodded once. All right. 2 officers documented the damage. Photos. Measurements. Close-ups of torn paint and adhesive residue. One of them stopped at the American flag decal and shook his head slowly. That's federal, he muttered. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The lieutenant turned back to me. Chief, did the HOA issue written notice prior to touching the vessel? No, sir. Did they have authorization from the Navy? No, sir. Did they knowingly apply materials to active duty equipment? Yes, sir. That's when Harris straightened, clipped his pen back into place, and looked toward Beatrix's house. All right then, he said. Let's go educate the HOA. The walk down the docks felt surreal. Every step echoed. Doors cracked open. Phones came out. HOA power depends on fear and paperwork, but none of that matters when real authority shows up. Beatrix saw them coming. She recovered fast. I'll give her that. As Harris stepped onto her dock, she smiled again, the practiced smile of someone who'd bullied her way through decades of meetings and fines. Good morning, officers, she said sweetly. Is there a problem? Harris didn't return the smile. Yes, ma'am, he said. There is. She gestured vaguely toward my boat. If this is about that eyesore, it's a simple HOA matter. We have bylaws. Community standards. Harris raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, that eyesore is a federally registered Navy Shore Patrol vessel. Her smile flickered. And you, he continued, are being investigated for vandalism of government property and interference with military operations. The color drained from her face. I'm the compliance chair, she stammered. We're allowed. No, Harris cut in. You're not. One of the officers stepped forward with a tablet. Ma'am, did you personally apply these stickers? Beatrix hesitated. Just long enough. Yes, she snapped. Because someone had to stand up for property values. That was the moment everything changed. Because Harris didn't argue. He nodded. Thank you for confirming. He turned to his team. Let's knock on her door. And that's when Beatrix realized this wasn't an HOA meeting. This was a federal issue. The knock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. 2 calm taps. Controlled. Professional. The kind of knock that doesn't ask, it informs. Beatrix stood there for a second too long, hand hovering over her espresso cup like it might protect her. The confidence she'd worn like armor all morning had cracked, and underneath it was something raw. Fear. She opened the door. Yes? She said, forcing composure. Lieutenant Harris didn't step inside. He didn't raise his voice. He simply held up his badge. Beatrix Ashworth Klein, he said. You are being formally notified of an investigation involving vandalism of United States Navy property. Her eyes flicked past him, to me. That's when the narrative in her head collapsed. This wasn't about HOA power anymore. This wasn't about compliance or property values or aesthetics. This was about jurisdiction. And she no longer had it. I didn't vandalize anything, she snapped. Those were removable notices. Temporary. The boat is offensive. Harris nodded slowly. Ma'am, adhesive damage to government equipment is not temporary. And intent doesn't change outcome. One of the officers began reading from a tablet. Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 1361. Willful injury or depredation against government property. Each word landed heavier than the last. Beatrick laughed nervously. This is absurd. I'll call my attorney. Please do, Harris said calmly. In the meantime, we'll need the sticker gun you used. Her face went pale. I threw it away. Harris looked at her steadily. That would be obstruction. Now the neighbors were fully out. Robes. Coffee mugs. Phones held high. The same people who nodded along at HOA meetings were suddenly very quiet. Beatrick tried a new angle. You don't understand, she said, lowering her voice. Military equipment doesn't belong in residential spaces. It scares people. Children. I felt something twist in my chest. My children, I said, finally speaking, sleep better at night knowing what that boat stands for. She turned on me. Your trauma doesn't give you special treatment. That's when Harris stepped between us. Ma'am, he said, firm now, this officer has served this country for over 2 decades. His service is not a violation. She scoffed. This neighborhood was peaceful before people like him arrived. The words hung in the air. People like him. There it was. The thing she hadn't meant to say out loud. One of the shore patrol officers exhaled sharply. Another shook his head. Harris straightened. All right. That's enough. He turned to Beatrick. Effective immediately, you are instructed to cease all HOA enforcement actions involving this vessel or this service member. And if I don't? She challenged weakly. Harris didn't hesitate. Then this investigation escalates. Charges will be recommended. And the Navy will pursue restitution for damages. Her confidence shattered. But the HOA board. The HOA board, Harris interrupted, does not outrank the United States Navy. Silence. Then Harris turned to me. Chief, we'll file the report today. Base Legal will follow up. I nodded. Thank you, sir. As they walked away, Beatrick stood frozen in her doorway, lips trembling. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked small. But this wasn't over. Because what she didn't know yet, what none of us knew yet, was that the HOA board had already made a move behind my back. And that move was about to blow this whole thing wide open. The email hit my phone before the shore patrol SUVs even left the street. Subject line, Notice of Emergency HOA Board Action. I knew that tone. Cold. Rigid. Written by people who'd never been told no. I opened it, and felt my stomach drop. Effective immediately, the HOA Board has voted to suspend dock access privileges for Lot 17 pending compliance review. My dock. My boat. My lifeline. I looked up just in time to see Beatrick watching from her doorway. Not smug anymore, but desperate. This wasn't confidence. This was spite. They can't do that, Sarah said behind me. She'd come down from the house, ICU scrub still on, eyes sharp despite a 12-hour shift. That dock is deeded. I handed her my phone. She read the email once. Then again. They're panicking, she said quietly. And panicked people make mistakes. She was right. Because while the HOA could posture all it wanted, they just tried to restrict access to an active-duty military vessel. Again. In writing. That email wasn't a threat. It was evidence. I forwarded it straight to Lieutenant Harris and Base Legal. The reply came back in under 5 minutes. Do not respond to the HOA. We are escalating. By noon, things moved fast. A white government sedan pulled up. Not shore patrol this time. Naval legal. 2 JAG officers stepped out, suits crisp, faces unreadable. They asked to see the dock easement, the deed, the HOA bylaws. The HOA president showed up too, different from Beatrick. Younger. Sweating. Carrying a binder like a shield. This is all a misunderstanding, he said, voice cracking. We respect the military. You just suspended access to federal property, one of the JAG officers said flatly. The man swallowed. They spread documents across the hood of my truck. Red lines circled clauses. Yellow highlights bled across the page. You see this? The JAG officer continued. Your bylaws explicitly prohibit interference with emergency services and government operations. Well, yes, but... And this dock, she added, tapping the deed, is privately owned, not HOA controlled. Beatrick arrived mid-sentence. I told them to do it, she blurted. I'm the compliance chair. The JAG officer looked up slowly. That was unwise. What's unwise? Beatrick snapped. Is letting traumatized soldiers turn neighborhoods into bases. Sarah stepped forward. I treat trauma victims every night, she said, voice calm but lethal. The only thing traumatizing here is you. The JAG officer closed the binder. Here's what's going to happen, she said. The HOA will immediately rescind all actions against Chief Sullivan. You will pay for damages to the vessel. And you will issue a written apology. Beatrick laughed, too loudly. Or what? The JAG officer met her gaze. Or the Navy sues the HOA for interference and discrimination. And we involve federal prosecutors. You could hear a pin drop. The HOA president looked like he might pass out. But Beatrick wasn't done. She leaned in, eyes burning. You think this ends me? I've run this HOA for 8 years. I know every loophole. That's when the JAG officer said the sentence that changed everything. Actually, ma'am, we've been reviewing your past complaints. Beatrick froze. Turns out, the officer continued, this isn't your first issue with military families. And suddenly, the story wasn't about my boat anymore. It was about a pattern. The word pattern landed like a depth charge. The JAG officer slid her tablet across the hood of my truck. On the screen, dates. Names. Addresses. 5 military families. All within this HOA. All over the last 6 years. Noise complaints during daylight training hours. Unauthorized equipment, citations for service vehicles. A denied playground request because it attracted aggressive behavior. Flags deemed non-compliant decor. Every single complaint traced back to one source. Beatrick Ashworth Klein. This isn't coincidence, the JAG officer said. It's targeting. Beatrick's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. You're twisting things, she snapped. I enforce rules equally. Sarah folded her arms. Funny how equality only seems to apply to people in uniform. The HOA president dropped into a lawn chair like his legs had quit on him. I didn't know about this, he whispered. She never told us. That's because, the JAG officer replied, she didn't need board approval. Your bylaws gave her unilateral enforcement authority. Beatrick straightened. Because someone had to protect property values. By harassing service members? The JAG officer shot back. The silence was thick now. Heavy. The kind that makes people think about consequences for the first time in their lives. One of the shore patrol officers, still on site, cleared his throat. Ma'am, do you understand that discriminatory enforcement can violate federal housing protections? Beatrick laughed again. But this time it cracked. Oh, please. This is a private community. The JAG officer shook her head. Private communities don't get to ignore federal law. That's when Beatrick's attorney arrived. Expensive suit. Confident stride. The kind of guy used to cleaning up messes like this. He listened for less than 3 minutes before his expression changed. He pulled Beatrix aside, whispered, gestured sharply toward the tablet. Her face collapsed. I was just doing my job, she hissed. They bring chaos. Sirens. Weapons. I stepped forward. My boat has saved lives on this lake, I said quietly, including 2 of your residents during a storm last year. She didn't look at me. The attorney turned back to the group. My client will cooperate. The JAG officer nodded. Good. Because the Navy is issuing a formal notice. She read it aloud. Immediate removal of Beatrix Ashworth Klein from all HOA enforcement duties pending investigation. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Beatrix's knees buckled slightly. You can't. Oh, but we can, the JAG officer said. And there's more. She looked directly at the HOA president. The board will vote tonight on permanently revoking her authority. The man nodded rapidly. Yes. Absolutely. Unanimous. Beatrix looked around. Neighbors she'd fined. People she'd humiliated. No one met her eyes. Her empire had collapsed in under 6 hours. But the real shock? That came next. Because as the JAG officer packed up, she turned to me and said, Chief, there's another matter you should know about. The JAG officer waited until the neighbors drifted back inside before she spoke again. This came up during our review, she said quietly. And it's concerning. She tapped her tablet once more. 3 years ago, Beatrix filed a zoning complaint against your dock. My chest tightened. That was dismissed. Yes, she said. But the complaint itself triggered a secondary inspection. She scrolled. During that inspection, the county flagged a discrepancy in HOA shoreline boundaries. The words didn't land immediately. Meaning what? Sarah asked. Meaning, the officer replied, the HOA may not legally control portions of this lakefront at all. The HOA president's head snapped up. That's impossible. Is it? The officer said calmly. Your association was formed before the shoreline was replatted. Several easements were never updated. She turned the tablet toward him. Red outlines overlapped blue ones. Lines didn't match. If these boundaries are wrong, the officer continued, then years of fines, restrictions, and enforcement actions may have been illegal. The HOA president went pale. That would expose the HOA to mass liability, the JAG officer finished, including refunds, damages, and penalties. Beatrix, who'd been sitting silently on her dock bench, suddenly stood. No, she said sharply. This is ridiculous. She pointed at me. This is his fault. He brought the Navy. He escalated. I met her gaze. You escalated when you touched federal property. She opened her mouth to respond, and stopped. Because at that exact moment, another vehicle pulled up. This one wasn't Navy. County. 2 officials stepped out, badges clipped, clipboards in hand. One of them nodded at the JAG officer like this meeting had been scheduled all along. Ms. Klein? The taller one asked. Yes? Her voice shook. We're here regarding multiple shoreline compliance complaints filed under your name. The HOA president whispered. Oh my God! The county official continued. Specifically, complaints that led to enforcement actions later deemed unsupported. Beatrix backed away. I was protecting the community. The second official shook his head. Ma'am, you may have cost this community millions. The realization hit her like a wave. All those years of power. All those fines. All those families she'd driven out. They weren't protected. They were victims. The county officials requested HOA records. Years of them. The president agreed without hesitation. Beatrix looked around, wild-eyed. You can't do this, she whispered. This is my life. The JAG officer's voice softened, but only slightly. No, ma'am. This is accountability. As the officials walked away with boxes of documents, The HOA president turned to me. "We're suspending all enforcement actions," he said. "Immediately." I nodded. "That's wise." But I wasn't celebrating. Because I'd just realized something too. This wasn't just about stopping Beatrice. It was about undoing everything she'd done. And that would take more than one investigation. The lake was quiet again that evening. Not the tense, watchful quiet from the morning, but the kind that lets you breathe. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. emergency session. Open attendance. Every seat filled. People stood along the walls. Some angry. Some relieved. Some just stunned. Beatrice didn't sit at the table. She sat alone in the back row. The HOA president cleared his throat. "This meeting is called to order." No gavel. No theatrics. Just reality. First item: suspension of all shoreline enforcement pending county review. Unanimous. Second item: permanent removal of Beatrice Ashworth Klein from the position of HOA compliance chair. The vote wasn't even close. 7 yes. 0 no. Beatrice closed her eyes. Third item: formal apology to all military families targeted under prior enforcement. I felt Sarah's hand squeeze mine. After the meeting, people approached us quietly. One man thanked me. A woman apologized for not speaking up sooner. Another said her husband had retired early because of the stress. Outside, under the yellow glow of dock lights, Lieutenant Harris met me one last time. "Chief," he said, "your boat's been cleared. No restrictions. No fines. Base command backed you fully." "Thank you," I said. "For everything." He nodded. "You didn't overreact. You responded." As he left, I walked down the dock alone. The boat was clean now. Fresh paint where the stickers had been. The flag replaced. Crisp. Untouched. I ran my hand along the hull. Solid. Real. This wasn't revenge. This was boundaries. Beatrice passed me on the way to her car. She didn't look at me. For the first time since I'd moved here, the lake felt like home. Not because the HOA lost, but because power finally met accountability. So let me ask you. If someone targeted your service, your family, your identity, would you stay silent? Or would you stand your ground?